Selina Robinson is a local family therapist and a Coquitlam City Councillor. She's the proud mother of 2 children, aged 21 and 19, and the surrogate mother of 1 wonderful little boy. Selina is friends with Terry and Paul. Terry and Paul's first child died of sudden infant death syndrome, and the physically traumatic delivery of their second child destroyed Terry's uterus. When Selina learned that her friends could have no more children, she offered her womb to carry their child. Tonight, Selina will speak to a series of photos and images that tell the story of how she offered to carry a child for her friend, the trial and challenges that they faced, and where they are 10 years later. Selina Robinson.
Thank you. So the story starts off with some words that I said back in October of 1999 when Terry called me about some work, actually. And we were just chit-chatting, and I said, so how's it going, the baby-making thing? You know, you've had Emily, and she wanted to have another child, and she said, no, it's not going very well. We're looking at adoption, we're looking at surrogacy, and I said, I could do that for you. And so this is a story, it's actually a love story that has many different components, but it's really the story of 2 families. We have Paul, and in his arms is their daughter Emily. We've got Terry and her son, hers and Paul's son, Evan, and then my husband, myself, and my 2 children. And one of the first things we had to do in order to make this work was we actually needed to talk about the legality of it. We were required by the fertility clinic to consult with lawyers. They make it very, very dry and boring. But we need to make sure, they wanted to make sure that I wasn't under any duress. So if anyone started to put me under duress, you know that I don't go for that. But we had a lot of things that we needed to take care of, real business items. And one of them was lots of tests. They needed to make sure that Terry actually had eggs. She was over 40, and they wanted to make sure that she could actually produce a baby with her eggs. We needed to make sure that Paul had sperm that were swimmers. And they needed to make sure that I had a uterus that could actually carry a child. It was quite technical. Then they needed to make sure that Terry and I had synced fertility systems. So they actually shut down my fertility by taking a nasal spray called Superfact. And this is actually the chart that I had to follow that made sure that they could control my hormonal system so that my uterus would be ready when it was time for Terry and Paul's embryos to be transferred to my uterus. It was very technical and medical, is the best way I could say. And one of the things that I've been so pleased about is that we all worked really hard to make sure that this was about people coming together to create a life and not about the medical system. When I was putting this together, I noticed that this is a May 31st ultrasound of Evan, and here we are 10 years later, and he's in the audience today. He's the only 10-year-old in the crowd, and this is what he looked like, May 31st in 2001. Now, Terry and I, like I said, this is a love story. It's a love story of 2 families, but it's also a love story between 2 girlfriends. In what I would say the most intimate way. I was carrying Terry's child, so when he would kick me at 4 a.m., I called Terry in the morning at 4 a.m. and say, guess what? I'm awake, so are you. But it was more than that because our families were involved, and Pia Chandel, I don't know if anyone remembers her from C-Fund, she was pretty controversial, and this got a little controversial, but I want to draw your attention to the last 2 sentences. My son wrote a letter to her because she was cranky. My mom gets the feeling of helping one of our close friends and feeling good about it. You just really need to look at the good side of things just once in a while. So for me, what it said is that my kids now appreciated that we need to do what's right. And this to me was what's right, but it wasn't perfect. I was considered a geriatric mother, which broke my heart because I was 37 years old, and I developed gestational diabetes. Freaked me out, managed by diet, and things got a little bit hairier because of prematurely ruptured membranes. Now, you've noticed my stature. Paul, Terry, and their family are of Dutch descent, and so they're Great Danes. And so it was a miniature poodle having a Great Dane. And so I was on bed rest for a good 5 weeks, which we didn't count on. And part of being on bed rest was that I needed to go for a stress test every day to make sure that this baby was thriving. And thrive he did. but it meant a lot of people coming together to make sure that this baby stayed in utero and grew and got stronger and healthier. And it meant that I had a bell and that my husband catered to me, which I wasn't quite expecting. But it also meant that Paul got to cater to me. So I went into premature labor, and this was a C-section by choice. And they needed to take the toenail polish off because I need to have nice toes. And so I made Paul take off the polish off of my toes while we waited to prep for surgery. It was the least he could do. He had the least amount of work to do in all of this. It was the least he could do. So here we are, two families. It's my dad, my daughter, Terry's mom, Terry's daughter, Terry, my mother-in-law, my son. That's one half of the hallway. I'm getting prepped in the other room, and Terry and I were going into the operating room to have a baby. On the other half is the other half of the family. This was really a lot of people coming together to bring one precious child into the world. And here we are. He was just over 4 pounds, the tiniest little thing, given that he was a Great Dane. And the first thing that we did, besides cry, the first thing that Evan did, what made us cry, was that he peed. You'd never seen two women happy about a little kid peeing. But what it meant for us was that we were successful. It took a year to make this happen. There were a lot of trials and tribulations, not way more than 6 minutes would allow. But he was perfect in every way. And for us, it meant that we were successful in making this happen. And we were so pleased to bring this life into the world. But it wasn't without yet more challenges. The provincial government wouldn't allow us to register Evan's birth the way we wanted to, because motherhood was determined by whoever gave birth to the child, but fatherhood was determined by genetics. So we threatened a lawsuit with the Human Rights Commission at the time, because we thought that was discriminatory, that fatherhood was based on genetics, but motherhood wasn't. And we were saying, no, in this case, I have no genetic material with Evan. And we took the province to court, and we won. And so I never actually had to put my name on Evan's birth certificate. And here he is, he's I think about 2 years old, when he finally became a somebody, and Evan David, call it Ribkima, got his birth certificate. And it was quite a battle. So there were many battles to make the surrogacy happen. It's one that I'm proud to have been a part of, one that I'm thrilled to be a part of. One that was important to me because, and when people ask, how could I have done that? My question back is always, how could I not do that for you? How could I not have done that for my friend? And so that's what I'm going to leave you with here this evening. I thank you very much for your attention, and just pay attention to what the things that you can do in people's lives. It really does make a difference. Thank you.